Okay, welcome everybody. Baruch Hashem, we are here for our first in a while of our summer programming. Baruch Hashem, many of us have been out of town, and we are so lucky to be back here together. I want to start by saying a special thank you and a huge mazel tov and happy birthday to Esther Azrielant, which used to be Babayev, and it's her birthday today. So she sponsored tonight's Farbrengen in honor of her birthday, 13th of Menachem Av. And may Hashem bench her with a year filled with joy, clarity, strength, shalom bayis. Baruch Hashem, she just got married. Parnasa, good health, revealed good in all aspects, and a strong relationship with Hashem. And we are so, so happy to be here together in honor of her birthday. A few years ago, we did a program where we invited shluchos during the kinnis to come and have some nachas from seeing the Limit Chassidus members and how much Limit Chassidus has grown over the years. And we had the great zchus, or I had the great zchus, to meet Mrs. Devorah Elkan. And she is a shlucha to Oberlin College, Ohio. And now that we made this relationship, we have the great zchus of having her again now that she's visiting in New York. So I'm going to pass the mic over to her. You want to sign it on your shirt.
I feel like a better place to. How's that? Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. And you know what? I am going to switch chairs if that's okay, because otherwise I'm going to swivel back and forth, and that would not be very nice and polite for you guys. Sorry. Okay. So just a very quick, like Michal said, Devorah Elkan from Oberlin College in Ohio. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Oberlin College, but it is known as one of the top most liberal colleges in the United States. So we've been there for 13 years already, so it's been quite a journey, but a little bit, I guess, a little broader on who I am. I grew up originally from Boston, grew up in Israel most of my life. I grew up in what's called the Kippah Sruga world, the B'nai Akiva Rav Kook world, if you guys any of you are familiar with it. And I guess always grew up with certain Chabad tendencies in our household, but we were never Lubavitchers. And even when we got married, my husband and I were both frum, but we're not Lubavitchers. And then we kind of started growing in that avenue. And at some point, my husband said to me, he's like, when you sound like a duck and you look like a duck, at some point, you're a duck. So at some point, we were Lubavitch ducks, and we embraced that. And kind of found ourselves in different places, including Atlanta, Georgia, Morristown, New Jersey, and now the last 13 years in Oberlin. So that's just a very, very brief, synopsis, I guess, of my life. Currently, like I said, we live in Oberlin with our 8 children, Chabad on campus, as well as involved in other fields, whether it's prisons. I actually just got licensed as a life coach, so I'm kind of like branching out a little bit into that as well. So we're kind of got our feet in all sorts of different places, and just makes life very interesting. But for tonight, I hope you guys will participate with me in an interactive way and not just listen to me talking. But I wanted to start out with, I want to ask a question. And some of you may have done this exercise before, but whether you have or haven't, I hope you can go with the flow. It's all going to happen in your head unless you want to share it. So don't be worried about anybody knowing what you're thinking. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you in your head to give yourself an answer. But the answer is like a one-word answer, and it has to be the first thing that comes into your mind. Don't overthink it. Don't start questioning it. Don't start, hey, welcome. It's always nice to have a fellow OB in the room. So Rachel went to Oberlin, so that's always a pleasure. So I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to think of the answer. Like I said, one word answer, the first thing that comes to mind, which is very hard because we have a tendency of either not allowing the first initial thought to come into our mind or to start second guessing the first thing that comes into our mind. Okay, so you have to be honest with yourself. And like I said, the only person that's going to know if you're honest with yourself is you because it's happening in your head. So the first word that comes into your mind when I ask you the question. After that, I'm going to ask you why, and you're going to have to come up with the answer why to why. And then I'm going to ask you why again. Okay, does that make sense what we're doing? Question, one word answer, why. And let's see what you come up with, okay? So here's the question. Life is. You got, okay, so some of you have already started not allowing the thought into your head. Not to freak you guys out, but I also, no. Okay, so last year I needed like some intellectual stimulation for myself. So I actually took a course in body language because I become a body language analyst. So I turn it off most of the time, don't worry. But some of you here have already started not allowing those words into your head. So we said the first word that comes to your head when I say life is, the first word that came into your head. Everybody has a word? So why? Okay. And then why? Okay. So if
Is the second why
on the why,
line?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Or more, oh, okay.
yes, not another why on your word, right? So we did a word. Life is blank. You were supposed to come up with a word. Then I asked you why that word. You're supposed to come up with an answer for that, and then a why on that answer. Does that make sense what we just did? Would anybody like to share the process that went through their head? No.
I didn't take body language classes, but I could tell.
You know, what? No. Maybe a different time I'll come back and I'll give a class on that. But yeah, go ahead.
Obviously not what I would say if I was to think about it, but the first word I came up with was warm.
Was what?
Warm.
Warm.
Life is warm. Then I tried to replace it with something else, but that was the first word that came up. And then why I decided because it's like stuffy and warm and a little. I don't know, like kind of like being in a warm place all summertime with stuffy kind of. And then like why? And I was like, because it's not easy. Like I'm a little uncomfortable.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Do you mind if I use your example for a second? Okay, so the word warm, right, could definitely be interpreted in different ways. So when she said warm, then the first why took her to the point of stuffiness, maybe a certain sense of feeling a little suffocated, claustrophobic. Would those words go along with what you were trying to describe? Okay, and then the deeper why was, what was it again? Because it's not easy. Okay, so she went from the word warm, life is warm, to it's complicated and not easy. And I would beg to say that everybody that's sitting here, whatever word you came up with, and then your final answer, if you think a little bit about where you're holding in life and some of the either trials or triumphs that you're experiencing in your life, I would beg to say that the whys that you answered are a certain reflection of whatever you're going through. If anybody else wants to share, and I'm happy to let it open here. I don't know how close you guys are with each other and how open you are, but it's very interesting exercise. I don't know if anybody, as they were answering those questions to themselves, had a certain like, a certain like, wow, didn't think about that, or like, whoa. But taking a moment and kind of reflecting on where I'm holding in life and asking that why and that another why and kind of going a little bit deeper, like I said, gives us a certain reflection of where we're holding. Positive, negative, whatever it may be, but where we're holding. And I must say, I did this exercise. My husband and I were here in March for the Sitin Shabbaton as speakers. And I did this exercise with a group of teenagers, and it was fascinating. It wasn't the topic of my talk, but I used it as also like a certain opening exercise. And the teens wanted to stay for like another whole session, just analyzing what everybody's processes were. And it was really fascinating to see. And normally as we go through our life, we don't really take that moment to reflect on where we're holding. Even when we're supposed to be in that place of, for some people it's prayer, for some people it's meditation, for some people it's sitting and hanging out on the couch, for some people it's taking a run. Each person has their different quote unquote happy place or reflecting place, or even if it's not defined in your head, this is my whatever, we all have that place or that space that we in theory reflect on where our life is or where we're holding. And that at that time, if we really kind of like sink into it and let ourselves go with that, a lot of realizations in life suddenly start surfacing that we don't necessarily allow to surface. And that's why I was saying, when I ask you the question, think of the first word, because the first thing that happens, the initial gut reaction that we have, the first word that comes into our mind is our neshama. That is the voice of our neshama. And then the voice of our, you want to call it Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Bahamis, whatever evil inclination. Each person has a different terminology for it and wants to relate to it in a different way. It's all the same thing. But that voice within us automatically kicks in. And then it's like, no, that's not the word you want. You want a different word, either because it's not a good word, or it's a bad word, or it's too good of a word, or how can you allow yourself to, right? And we start having this inner dialogue with me, myself, and I of what word is okay or appropriate to put into that blank. But if we're able to kind of like put that voice aside and focus on the initial voice, on the voice of our neshama, and kind of go with that, and then ask on that word, the why, and the why, then maybe it could bring us to a point of like, whoa, maybe this is something that I want to work on. This is something I want to have more of in my life. This is something I want to have less of in my life. Whatever it may be, if we can focus on that voice, the initial voice that comes in, and kind of enhance it, then it kind of gives us the raw material to work with in life. And this exercise, you can do it at any point, and you can kind of ask it on anything, this exercise, but it's something that you can even stop in the middle of your day. And if you feel like life is just kind of like going and going and going, or you're just going through the motions of life and you need a certain moment to pause, do that exercise in your head. On your own. You saw it takes half a minute to do, and see where it takes you, see what comes out, see where you go with it. It's like I said, it's very interesting and fascinating to allow yourself that space, because a lot of times we don't allow ourselves the space to do that. We have in our head almost like a checklist of what we're supposed to be doing, what we should be doing, what we think other people think that we should and are supposed to be doing. But in reality, what are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be doing what our neshama is telling us to do. Because if our neshama that's in us is an actual part of Hashem, right? We learn in Chassidus, one of the first things that when somebody comes around to learn with the Rebbitzin in the Chabad house, right? One of the first things is, right? That we all possess a neshama that's within us. And that neshama is an actual part of Hashem. And it's instilled in every single one of us. Sorry if I just made noise for whoever's on the, I touched the microphone by accident, sorry. So if we all possess that neshama, we all possess that piece of godliness that's within us, then we all have the ability to listen to that voice. It's just a matter of allowing ourselves to listen to that voice and not masking it or not telling ourselves that we don't need to or that we don't have to. And just as like a, I guess like as a little side note on this matter, right? It says like, who says that we are chelek Elokah? Who says that we actually have a piece of Hashem in us? And my favorite like metaphor that I like to use, or not metaphor, it's kind of dissecting the actual verses. Sorry. When we look in Bereshit, when Hashem creates Adam and Eve, what does Hashem do? How does he create them? Anybody remember those verses? Not to recite those verses, but don't worry, I'm not going to. I'm not going to test you on reciting the verses. But what does Hashem do to create Adam? Blows into what? First he takes dust, he takes clay. What does he do out of the clay? Forms the shape of a body and then blows life into it, right? So he takes the dust, the clay from the earth, forms the shape of Adam, and puts an actual piece of godliness in this form. And by that we have Adam. Very simple math, because beyond simple math I don't do. What is a man? 50% dirt, 50% godliness. And then what happens a few verses later? What does Hashem do to create Chava? What? He takes a portion from Adam. By the way, I just want to bust a myth here if we're already sitting here, okay? It says, Vaikach Tzela, right? He takes a Tzela. Now, for some reason, in the Christian translation of the Bible, it says a rib, okay? But Tzela is not a rib. Tzela just means a side. If you have a triangle that's called a meshulash, meshulash has a shalosh tzlaot. Tzela means a side. A triangle has 3 sides. Okay, so tzela doesn't mean rib. That's a Christian translation of the Bible. It just means that he took a side. He took a portion of Adam. And what did he do? What did he do with that portion? Everybody knows, just everybody's embarrassed to say, because they think that they're going to be wrong. So let's go back to what I said before. Take away those voices of the Yetzer Hara or your Nefesh Bahamis, and don't be so shy. He takes a piece of Adam, forms the shape of a woman, and then what does he do? He adds another part of godliness into Chava, and then makes Chava. So let's go back to our simple math. Not 100%, not quite, we're getting there, but exactly. So in very simple math, Chava is 25% dirt and 75% godliness, right? Because he took a part from man, which was 50-50, added more godliness to it. So then you have 25 dirt, 75 godliness. Now, why am I bringing this? Other than the fact that just thinking about it is mind-blowing. Because as Jewish women, our job, our goal, our purpose in this world is what we call second to God. What does that mean? If Hashem is 100% godliness, one step down from that is the woman, and a step down from that is going to be a man. And if we continue going steps down from that, it's going to be the animals, the vegetation, the inanimate, right? And it continues going. Yes, sometimes men can behave like other lower parts also, but so a Jewish woman possesses, or her neshama stems from a higher spiritual place than that of the soul or the neshama of a man. Sure, please.
all women, or this is
Okay, so it's a very good question, and that gets into the whole concept of where does a neshama of a Jew stem from versus a neshama of a goy stem from, and that goes more into the short answer is all women are on a higher spiritual level than all men. If we want to get deeper into the souls of Jewish women, the souls of Jewish men versus the souls of non-Jews, I'm happy to come back at a different time and talk about that. But that has to do with the garments, like the components, not the garments, sorry, the components of the soul. Have you ever heard of nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida? The 5 parts of the soul. So that's a Jewish soul, has those 5 parts. A non-Jewish soul does not possess all 5 parts. So yes, there is a difference in the playing field to begin with. But in general, yes, women are on a different spiritual level than men. All women, all men, right? And if you think about it, Hashem created the world. Who is the only other being in this world that can create life? It's women, okay? Only women can create life. Only women can bring into this world something that didn't pre-exist beforehand, the same way Hashem created the entire world. So that's like a certain manifestation of the woman's neshama being on a different level. And when it says, I'm sure you guys have heard this this before, right? In the merit of Jewish women, the Jews were taken out of Israel, were taken out of Egypt, and in the merit of Jewish women, they will be redeemed in the future. Meaning that the bringing of Mashiach at the bottom of it all, or the base of it all, is in the hands of the women. Yes, it's important that the men do the mitzvahs that they're obligated to do, and that elevates the world, and that reveals the yes, 100%. But ultimately, the bringing of Mashiach, the tipping of the scale from the world being in this place of galus to the place of geula, is in the hands of the woman. The same way the woman can bring a life, bring the world from a non-existing, right? This baby wasn't here a few months ago. This neshama didn't exist in this world a few months ago. And thanks to the baby's mother, the baby now exists, and this neshama is in this world, and this neshama can do stuff in this world and really transform the world. So ultimately, it's in the hands of the Jewish woman. And sorry. And the reason I'm mentioning that is not to be like, oh my gosh, we now have the pressure of the entire world on our shoulders. Yes, but no, like, don't worry. Don't worry, in the sense that when we look at that quote unquote responsibility, it's a coin that could have 2 sides. And it's a matter of what side of the coin you choose to look at, right? It could be, oh my gosh, I can't bear that pressure. There's no way I can handle that. There's no way I can do that. Leave me out of this picture. I don't want anything to do with it. Or we could look at it as, oh my gosh, think about this tremendous, unbelievable power that just this room of women sitting here has, and the ability that we have to really make a difference in this world. It's mind-blowing to think that we actually have this power. And it's not, what's the term in, what's the phrase in English? Lip serve? Is that how you say it? What? Lip service, right? When somebody just says something to appease you. Yeah, thank you. It's not lip service. We just went through the verses, right, from Bereshit, and we saw how the power of a Jewish woman is on a higher level. It draws so much more directly from Hashem that therefore our powers, think about it, if somebody's going to plow the land and they just have that old, we have Amish that live near us, and we see them all with their oxes and the old plowing tools that were used way back when. They still use it today. So think about going to plow the land with that versus going to plow the land with a tractor that you're just sitting there driving along with a machine behind you that's doing all the work, right? That's the difference. The men are standing there with holding on to the device and walking and doing all the hard labor. Well, not some of the hard labor, right? Whereas the women are sitting on the tractor, riding and pulling behind them this modern automated device that's doing all the heavy lifting. Just by the fact that they're Jewish women. They didn't have to do anything else beyond that. Now, you want to continue and you want to plant and you want to tend to the field and you want to do all these different things and fertilize it and take care of all the stuff that's growing, then even better. But just by being a Jewish woman, we have that advantage of being able to do that. So we also have the ability and the power to decide how we look at the world that's around us. And I'll give you an example. If you ever seen a Persian rug? I don't know how it is nowadays, but I remember when I was younger, people would put them on their walls as like pieces of art because they're really like real Persian rugs are unbelievable. They are pieces of art, like very intricately done, very detailed. And it says that Hashem looks at the world like a Persian rug. What does that mean? If you flip the rug upside down, you'll see all the tears, all the knots. You'll see where they may have skipped a stitch. You'll see where they had to pull the needle from one place to another and start the color in a different look, right? You see all of the nitty gritty of the making of the rug. But if you look from the top, what you see is this beautiful piece of art. We have a tendency when we look at the world and when we interact with the world, and it's just human tendency, to look at it as if we're looking at the bottom of the rug, to notice all of the tears and all the stitches and all the mishaps and all the missed stitches and all the where you had to pull the yarn from this place to that place. And we're like, what was Hashem thinking? Like, what was he thinking with this world? But Hashem's looking down from above, and what he's seeing is the top of the rug. He's seeing this beautiful piece of art. And that's how he looks at the world. And we also have the ability to choose how we're looking at the world. Are we looking at it from the bottom? Or are we looking at it from the top? And sorry, Rachel, I'm just going back to your example for a second, if that's okay, right? But when we start, when I asked you, life is, fill in the blank, and the word that came up was warm. Other people here may have come up with the same word. And then when I asked the why and the why, they may have come up with completely different answers, depending on where they're holding in life, depending on what's happening to them, depending on the interactions that they're having, depending on how things are going at home, depending on the job that they're doing or lack of job that they have, whatever it may be, wherever we're holding in life, those different components of our life are affecting and influencing how we choose to look at the rug of the world. If we're looking at it from the bottom or if we're looking at it from the top. And what I think that one of the most powerful things is, aside of the neshama that we possess, look, okay, great, we have this neshama, but what do I do with it? The next step after acknowledging that I have this neshama is realizing and acknowledging that I have the power of choice. What does that mean? Hashem gave us what we call bchira chofshit. What is bchira chofshit? How do we translate it? Free choice. Awesome. When I was trying to improve my English, I was told that the translation for bchira chofshit is free will. That's what I was always told, free will. And for years and years and years, I used that translation. And then I realized there's no way that this is the right translation, because that's not what it means. I don't have free will. I don't. The neshama that's inside me, which is a piece of Hashem, puts me with a predisposition. I don't have free will. What I do have is bchira chofshit. I have free choice. What do I do with this will that's inside me? What do I do with the, whatever you want to call it, yetzer hara, nefesh habahamis, evil inclination, whatever, the voices that are in my head that try to sway me away from listening to my neshama? That's where I take this neshama from being a theoretical thing to being a thing that can actually change this world. What do I mean by that? That moment of choice. When I asked you, life is, and you came up with a word, that split second, literally split second, that you came up with a word in your head. And what did I say? What was the instruction that I gave you at the beginning? Go with the first word that comes into your head and don't allow the other voices in your head to sway you away from that word. It happens in like literally splits of second. And I'm sure everybody that's sitting here that did this exercise is saying yes in their head, even if you're not nodding, because that's how it goes. It's that split moment of whether I make the choice to listen to the voice of my neshama, or I make the choice to listen to these other voices that are in my head. And I'm not talking about chas v'shalom voices that require professional assistance, okay? We all have voices in different ways in our head. That split second is where our bchira chofshit comes into play, where our free choice comes into play. How am I going to look at this world? How am I going to interact with this world? Am I going to look at the Persian rug from the top or from the bottom? Am I going to look at the word that comes into my head when I say life is? Am I going to go with that word, that first word that comes out? Or am I going to start justifying why I need to pick a different word? Or why the word that I chose is not good, or is not right, or it's not positive, it doesn't, right? We go into all sorts of different. Now, why am I saying that it's so important? The free choice in that split moment. Because we always talk about, right, doing mitzvahs is going to transform the world and is ultimately going to bring Mashiach. That's true. Personally, I feel something that's lip serve. Lip service. Sorry, I have to write that down on my little phrase note. Lip service. What do I mean by that? It's not that it's a false statement. It's a true statement, but it's a statement that I don't know what to do with. What do I do with that? How do I turn that concept into a very practical thing in my life that I can really, quote unquote, see a certain progression, see a certain improvement? And I believe some may disagree with me, and that is totally okay, that we're not really going to see a real change in this world until Mashiach comes. On the broad picture, that's true. We're not going to see complete revealment of godliness at all times and all places until Mashiach comes. But even in the point where we're living right now, we can experience what I call moments of Mashiach, moments of Geula, moments where my neshama is doing completely what it's supposed to do in this world. And when I'm in that moment, it's a certain sense of wholesomeness. What does that mean, wholesomeness? Wholesomeness means that if we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. It's not only Hashem is one. Hashem is the oneness of the world. That everything in this world is in sync with Hashem. everything is permeated with Hashem. And in that split second, when I'm in that oneness, when I'm in that synced moment, I have that sense of wholesomeness. And how can I achieve that sense of wholesomeness? In a very real way. It's when I utilize and I take advantage of the free choice that Hashem gave me, and I use it to listen to the voice of my neshama. Because when I listen to the voice of my neshama, I'm drawing out the godliness that's in me, and I'm taking that energy and I'm sending it into the world. And I'm literally adding godliness into this world. And in that moment of adding that godliness into that world, it's a sense of inner wholesomeness. Because it's me and the world, me and Hashem, but it's all one. Because if I possess a neshama that's Hashem, and Hashem is all over in every aspect of the world, then when I'm releasing that spiritual energy from me into the world, which is already also with, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? I know it sounds a little lofty and a little like Kabbalah Wale, but go with it for a second. It closes the circuit. It creates a full circuit in the world. So going back to the exercise, life is, I just use that question. Again, you can use any question. The point of the question was to give you a moment of an exercise to trigger the voice of your neshama. And to try to give you a glimpse into what does that mean, the voice of my neshama? The first thing that comes into our mind, the first thing that comes into our head, that's our, what we call our ratzon, our will. When I was saying we don't have free will, we don't. Our will, our ratzon, is the ratzon of Hashem. It's the will of Hashem, because we all have neshamas. So the moment that voice creeps into our head, if we're able to block out all of the other voices that creep up right away and focus on that initial voice that came in and go with that, enhance that, see where that takes you, that's releasing that godliness that we have. And if we said that women have more godliness in them, think about how much more godliness women are releasing into this world when they tap into that voice, into that sound of their neshama. Now, we all know that they always say women have, whether it's a lot of insecurities, lack of self-value, self-worth, a lot of those things are more prevalent amongst women than they are amongst men. It's just the reality of the world. Why is that? Because if anybody knows the physics of it, I don't know the physics equation, but right, every action has a reaction that's of the same or greater force or whatever, something like that. Sorry? An opposite. We'll go with what you said. I don't know the exact physics term of it. I should look it up one day, but the idea is that everything in this world has a certain opposite force to it. So if the women have that much more godliness in them, that much more power for their neshama to affect this world, then they're going to have that much more of those self-doubt, self-questioning, lack of self-confidence and self-worth, because that's the reaction from the extra godliness. Whereas men don't have as much of that reaction because they don't have as much of that godliness. Does that make sense what I just tried to explain? Okay. But what it means that yes, we have to work a little harder, maybe sometimes a lot harder, to block out those voices, to block out that self-doubt, to block out that lack of self-worth, lack of self-value, lack of self-confidence. What's the difference between self-worth, self-value, and self-confidence? Anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? Everybody that didn't answer, that's sitting in this room, is sitting here and saying to themselves, oh, I know the answer, but I'm embarrassed to say, and I don't want to be wrong, and I don't want somebody to think less of me. That's called self-confidence, okay? Self-confidence is what we think other people are going to think about us, or what they do think about us. Self-worth and self-value is how I measure myself compared to myself. Does that make sense? One is how I think other people think of me. And everybody that doesn't want to answer is questioning, what is somebody else going to think about me if I give the answer? Don't worry, it's perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with you. And self-worth and self-value is, well, really, this is something that I would expect of myself to know. And I'm not sure I know it, and therefore I don't want to say it. Why don't I know it? That's really bad. I should know this. I should know this. That's self-doubt. Or that's questioning my self-worth. Now, going back to the neshama, because if you haven't noticed yet, that's a theme here. Hashem put us in this world with the portion of neshama that we were supposed to have, in the body that we're supposed to have, with all the talents and the skills and the challenges and the things I do good and the things that I don't do good that we're supposed to have. Because that is the perfect toolbox that I need in order to accomplish what I'm supposed to in this world. So I'll give you a very personal, right? A very personal example. My entire life, my size was always a challenge for me. And I was always, and still am, very self-conscious about it. And as much as I try to say to myself, this is the package that Hashem decided that your neshama needed in this world. I can't go with that. I can't believe that, right? And it's constantly, why am I not skinnier? Why am I not, right? But when I have those moments, those split moments of what I call moments of Geula, moments of Mashiach, there are these split moments when I feel like I can really embody that idea that Hashem put Devorah Elkan in this world with the complete toolbox that she needs. Now, complete toolbox doesn't mean, oh, life is going to be smooth sailing. It means that whatever I encounter in life, I already have the tools to deal with it. It's a matter of unlocking all of those tools and making all of those tools, turning them from things that are deep down inside to workable tools in my toolbox that I can just pull out whenever I need it. And when that tool becomes a workable tool in my toolbox, and I can just whip it out at any moment, then I can make my split moment of Mashiach moment to maybe like a little bit more than a split moment. And then when I can unlock another tool, maybe that moment will grow just a touch more. Until we all unlock all of these tools that are in us, and that's when Mashiach comes. Now, what does that look like? We experience a challenge in our life. we experience a moment of struggle. Something happens. And we ask ourselves, wait a second, what's happening here? This is really bad. This is really horrible. There's no way I'm going to get out of this. I just don't see anything good coming out of it. In that split moment, we have the ability to make a choice. Is this how I'm going to look at the situation? Or am I going to look at the situation in a different way? Am I going to look at this situation as Hashem put me in this experience? What am I supposed to learn from it? How am I supposed to grow from this? And therefore finding what we would call the good in this situation. Now, again, our initial reaction, our initial desire is to look at the negative. There are people that were born into this world that we call Yechidei Segula, like they're far and few between, that were born into this world with natural tendencies of being able to look at the positive. But the vast majority of us that are in this world were born with not that natural ability. We were born with life is fill in the blank, and automatically all of the other voices take over. Sorry?
Negativity bias.
Negativity, that's a book or something, right?
Not positivity bias.
Sorry.
It's trying to stop, it's trying to change the natural
Right.
negativity bias we do have.
Yes, thank you. So, sorry? No, so there's a term in Hebrew that are called Yechidei Segula. It's just a term to say the select few that are different or like very special or unique. So there are people that they are select few, very unique, that are born with the positivity bias. But the majority of us are born with negativity bias. But how can we stop that? Or how can we transform that moment that the negativity pops into our head? So let's take, for example, something not so great happens. Let's make it very real, okay? The beginning of the year, our oldest daughter, who's 16, went to Israel for high school. She was hoping to do rest of high school in Israel. Didn't work out, was a really bad experience. And we decided we were bringing her back to America. Literally a few days before she was supposed to come home, she was in an accident. Baruch Hashem, everything's fine. She's okay. All wounds were external. And it happened like on a Motzei Shabbos in Israel when it was still Shabbos here. So I turn on my phone after Shabbos. My parents live in Israel. I turn on my phone. The first thing that pops up is a message from my father that starts with, "Don't worry, she will be okay." And you're like, wait a second, what just happened? And then he gave like a whole message explaining what happened. I don't know how. I mean, I'd like to hope that I know how. But in that moment, obviously the first thing that came to my head, because I hadn't spoken to her yet, I didn't know what was going on, and was all this like, I was painting like the most horrible thing that could be, right? And then I spoke to her on the phone. I don't know, I mean, other than to say that Hashem was just like channeling right through me and put the exact right words in my mouth at the right time, I don't have any other explanation. So we're on the phone, and of course she's burst into tears and she's crying. And I said to her, I was like, it was an accident. And there was nothing you could do about it. That's the nature of an accident. There's nothing you could do about it. Hashem brought this. Hashem decided this was something you needed to experience. And that's it. There's no there's no place to feel ashamed. There's no place to feel like, oh my gosh, what could I have done differently, right? Because that's the nature of an accident. You could have done everything right, and an accident will still could happen. My mother told me later on, the reason I'm saying I don't know, other than Hashem speaking through me, I don't know how, because my mother said later on that that my daughter was terrified to talk to us because she was sure that I was going to get mad and I was going to start drilling her on like, well, why weren't you doing this and why weren't you going here and what, like, really, right? But somehow I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, that's what was meant to happen, and we're going to deal with it. And from that split second that those words came out of my mouth, when we were dealing with all of the medical things that needed to be dealt with, the only thing that I kept seeing was the hand of Hashem in everything. And what do I mean by that? One of the main things that happened is that she hurt her mouth and she needed an oral surgeon to take care of some stuff there. Hashgacha Pratis, my cousin, who had retired, he's an oral surgeon and orthodontist from Beverly Hills, retired a year and a half ago to Eretz Yisrael. So when this all happened, my mother called him up, sent him a picture of my daughter's mouth, and he was like, get into the car, come to Yerushalayim, and he took care of it. Obviously there's healing and everything, but like, what else could this be other than Hashem's hand? Okay, after he took care of the mouth, she then needed to go to the hospital to take care of other stitches and x-rays to make sure that there wasn't any internal stuff going on. They get to the hospital, and one of the main parts where she needed to get stitched was right by her eyebrow. The eye doctor that was on call that night also had plastic surgery training. What are the chances that the doctor on call, not a plastic surgeon, the eye doctor that's on call, had plastic surgery training, so the stitches that he put in her eyebrow were like those plastic surgery stitches that you can barely see any stitch? Now, when I say that we have the power of choice, and I can continue with all these other, she came back to America, she needed to get root canals done in her mouth and whatnot, which are extremely expensive, and our Chabad house budget cannot afford it. We walk into the doctor's office, and he's like, "Oh, are you guys Chabad?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're the Chabad out in Oberlin College." Next thing you know, he gave us out of nowhere, he gave us 50% discount on the entire thousands of dollars of work. I'm like, and it was again and again and again and again, these moments that normally I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most horrible thing. This is the worst thing that could ever happen. How are we going to get out of this? How are we going to, right? But when we exercise our bchira chofshit, when we exercise our free choice, and we choose what side of the carpet to look on, going back to that Persian carpet, and how we choose to view the world, and we listen to the voice of our neshama, and we exercise that free choice in those moments where the voices want to creep in, and we keep them out, we block them out, that's when we unlock the godliness. That's when we allow the godliness to flow into the world. And yes, when we say brachas on our food, that's also releasing godliness. When we are nice to our neighbors, that's also releasing godliness. But going back to when I asked you, what's the difference between self-confidence versus self-worth and self-value? That's the difference. Helping my neighbor is like self-confidence. It's external to me. Exercising my free choice, listening to the voice of my neshama, is internal to me. It's working on saying the package of me that Hashem put into this world is the perfect combination that needs to be in this world in order to transform this world. And when I could try to focus on that and try to listen to that, think about how much godliness we release into this world. And I know we're kind of up with time here, so I just want to bring it back for a second to where we're holding in this time of the year. Okay. Starting from the beginning of the 3 weeks, we read 10 haftarahs every Shabbos that are all about our yearning for Jerusalem, all about our yearning for Mashiach. 3 of them, right, are quote unquote the sad, the negative ones, the poranut, leading up to Tisha B'Av. And then the next 7 are Sheva de Nechamta, 7 haftarahs that are all about the coming of Mashiach, the building of Yerushalayim. And if you look at every single one of these haftarahs, the first word of every haftarah is double, right? Nachamu, Nachamu. If you look at every single one of them, you'll see the first word is double. And the Rebbe asks, why are they all double? The Torah, we know, doesn't put any word in unnecessarily. So why are these all double? And there's a beautiful explanation that ties into something that Rabbi Akiva said. If you're familiar with the famous stories of Rabbi Akiva, there's several of them throughout the Gemara. But one of the most famous ones, right, is that there's all these great rabbis that are looking over the destroyed Jerusalem, and they see a fox coming out of, right, there's the fox, like there's the nevuah, the prophecy about the fox coming out of the temple, and they're all heartbroken about all the negative things that happened to the Jewish people. And it says that Rabbi Akiva is laughing. Are you guys familiar with this story? Okay. And then they're like, well, why are you laughing? And Rabbi Akiva says, well, if the negative happened, then it means that the positive happened. And then it ends with Akiva nichamtanu, Akiva nichamtanu. Akiva, you've given us comfort. And what does it do? It says it twice. Again, that double language of repeating the same thing. And the explanation on that is that when we want to bring comfort to another person, or what is comfort? What is nechama? Nechama is not, or comfort is not when we come to a person and we see that they're in distress and we try to say like, oh, don't worry, it's not as bad, or it's not so bad, or right. The worst thing to say to a person is, it could have been worse, right? Or to give them explanations or examples of how it could have been worse. That definitely doesn't bring any comfort, right? But when we take the negativity and we can draw out of it the positivity and transform the negativity into positivity, that's what comfort is. And it says that the reason it's a double language is because Yeshayahu, the prophet, who all of these 7 prophecies of Nechama are all from Yeshayahu, by the way, he was the only one that had, quote unquote, the guts of all the prophets to give so many prophecies of comfort. And Hashem, the Gemara says that Hashem, as a reward for that, said that any time he gives a prophecy of comfort, Yeshayahu, it's going to bring to the world double measure of comfort from any other prophet. So nachamu, nachamu ami. When we're able to look at the negative and draw out of it, transform it into the positive, that's when we bring the comfort. And when a Jewish woman who has double the portion of godliness is able to do that, nachamu, nachamu ami. They bring double the amount of godliness, double the amount of comfort into this world. So when we experience a moment that could be a challenging moment, that we could look at it as quote unquote bad or negative, and we exercise our power of choice and transform that vision of negative into a vision of positive and go with that, we unleash in this world double the measure of comfort, double the measure of positivity. And we see all these different things that are happening in this world today that we could look at them as very negative things. I don't know if anybody keeps up with what's going on socially in Israel or what's going on even in the United States or all over the world. There's so many social challenges on global communal levels. I can say that in Oberlin, one of the main things that we see is, yes, there's a lot of mishigas that goes there, but on a very real, but one of the main things that we see is people walking around feeling lonely. And there's people all around them. It's not like they're on a deserted island, but feeling lonely. And I would beg to say that when we listen to the voice of our neshama, and we can really be real with ourselves and be real with the world around us and unleash that godliness, unleash that positivity, it will create connections between people. So on that note, I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to wish everybody, I hope what I said made sense to everybody and it wasn't just, like I said, Kabbalah Wallahi. But I hope it's some food for thought. And that I hope that in the next few days or weeks, as you kind of process it, because I know it's a lot, you'll have like aha moments of everything. And some of this will make sense and some of this will resonate. And I really, really hope that you find yourselves in what I call moments of Geula, moments of Mashiach, moments of wholesomeness, where you feel that your presence in this world is vital to this world, and that you can really see and feel how you're affecting this world and connect and relate to the people and the world around you in a very holy way. And I think it's doable. I'm not saying that it's easy work, but it's doable. And I'm going to stop here. I'm happy to sit around if anybody has questions or wants me to clarify any points. But if anybody would like to head out, I'm going to be respectful of the clock and stop here. So thank you.
We'll leave time for questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanna first, on behalf of all of us, you have brought so much light to us. This has been really deep and meaningful, and we want to thank you. So you get a choice, whichever color matches your.
Oh wow!
So we have,
thank you.
Oh
wow! Amazing.
Candles.
Thank you so much. That's perfect.
And in order to receive them, one of the things that we're very proud of is our matchstick tray.
Ooh.
So that way it doesn't make the rest of your tray dirty. So you can put your
That's
match
awesome.
into the tray. It says, "A little light dispels a lot of darkness." And thank you so much for bringing so much light into our lives.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is perfect. It's actually just what I needed. Yay! It really is. I keep trying all these different boxes of matches that just don't look nice on the tray. And I'm like, no, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. So this is perfect. Thank you.
And then there's a few choices if you want to check it out.
Awesome.
We have a tradition. Oh, before we do the tradition, I wanted to share this our first public part of it. We have little onesies for our new babies that live in the city. So 2 babies are here right now. So I want to present our little onesies. And then the 2 ones that are here are girls. So we have a little boy version. It has the men's
Can she
logo.
see? I don't know if she can. I don't know if she can.
This is the men's and this is the women's. They are.
Sorry,
and with that, I wanna finish off with our tradition. We have a long-standing 10-year tradition of taking a selfie with our speaker. So we're gonna take a selfie with our speaker, and then everyone who's welcome to stay and ask questions and continue. So let me just take. So we can have a phone that takes really. That takes us.
Anyone have an iPhone, or we can use my iPhone? Which is easier? You have a good phone? He said, that's a good start.